Welcome to Sewing Anastasia, and today we are going to make a super awesome jacket. This jacket pattern comes in sizes extra small through 6X, and it's a downloadable PDF pattern. And you can get that through the link down below at sewinganastasia.com. And in this tutorial, we're also going to go over how to hack this pattern to make this style all you. I'm going to go over how to take this pattern and make it longer, how to make it shorter, how to make the sleeves longer, how to make the sleeves shorter. Maybe you want the jacket flared. I'm also going to show you how to do that with this pattern and how to find your sizes on the size chart and make sure it fits you like a glove. I love this jacket style because it is so easy to wear, and it's a great piece to go in between seasons or wear indoors when it's just a little extra chilly. And depending on what kind of fabric you make it out of, you can really change the style of it. I love it in this quilted fabric. This one over here, I had fun mixing and matching different remnant pieces I had. So you could do like an upcycled jacket. This one over here, we did some stripes. And in this video, you're gonna learn all about constructing a jacket with the separating zipper. We've got a collar. We've got zippers on the sleeves even set in. So cool, right? Check that out. And you're also gonna learn all of those amazing pattern hacks. And let's not forget setting in sleeves. And if you want to learn even more about sewing, make sure you check out my online sewing academy and my sewing club. There's a link for those down below in the description. So let's do it. Let's create this jacket and learn all kinds of awesome sewing techniques. The first thing you need to do is print out your pattern. This one here is the A0 file. This is the large format copy that you send to a printer. You can also print out the letter copy at home and tape it all together. Both patterns are exactly the same. First things first, let's go over the size chart and choose the appropriate size for you. For this pattern, you need to measure your bust and your waist. So the fullest part of your bust and the smallest part of your waist. So when you take your measurements, they might match up perfectly in one of the sizes, and if they do, then that's going to be your size. But what if your bust is a 39, so you're a large here, and your waist is a 2X, you're down here. I'm going to show you how to grade from the bust to the waist. So this is going to be fairly easy. What I want you to do is find the size large and mark the underarm right here. This is going to be where our bust is. So I have the purple line here, which is large. Once I've got the large marked, I'm going to go down to the waist and I'm going to mark the 2X at the waist. So now I have a point at my bust for the right size and a point at my waist for the right size. And now all I have to do is connect the dots from the bust to the waist. And now we have made the waist bigger, but not our bust, and it gradually tapers down to the waist. So that line that we just drew is going to be your new cutting line. And if you did this adjustment to the back of your pattern, you're going to do the same thing to the front of the pattern as well. So now this jacket pattern is going to fit you in your bust and your waist. And let's say you have a bigger bust and a smaller waist. You're going to do the same thing, but in the opposite direction. So let's say I'm a large bust, but I have a small waist. So I'm going to line up the large at the bust, and I'm going to line up my ruler with the small at the waist. And I'm going to connect these two spots. And now I know that my pattern is going to fit me in the bust, and it's going to narrow in at my waist. Also, something to keep in mind about this pattern, because it's a jacket, is that there's ease built into it. So at the waist here, it is not skin tight. We have room here to move. At the bust, we have some room to move in here. So if you really want to perfect your fit with this, maybe you want it more fitted and tight, maybe you want it bigger and looser. Before you start adjusting the pattern, you can always measure the pattern and compare it to your measurements. So this size chart here that you're following is the recommended size for the jacket with ease in it. So if you are a small with a 26-inch waist and you measure the waist on this jacket pattern, it is not going to be 26. It is going to be larger than that because it has ease built into it. So let's say you were a small in the bust, but a medium in the waist. There's a good chance that you can just cut out the small because there was that extra ease in the waist. So you can always measure your pattern and double check. Let's go over that real quick. So I'm going to be measuring the small at the waist. So I have the back pattern piece here. So from center back all the way over to the small line, it looks like I have 8 3/4. Now there's a 1/2 inch seam allowance in this pattern. So it's minus a 1/2 inch, which is going to equal 8 1/4. So I measured the back waist at 8 3/4, but we have seam allowance in this at a 1/2 inch. So we're going to minus a 1/2 inch. So now we're left with 8 1/4, and that's for half of the back because the pattern is cut unfold. Now let's measure the front. When I measure the front, we've got 9 3/4. For our front waist measurement, I got 9 3/4. And for this one, we need to minus an inch because we have a 1/2 inch at the side seam and a 1/2 inch at center front, leaving us with 8 3/4. So now what we need to do is take our back measurement and our front measurement, add them together and times 2, and that will give us a full finished measurement of the waist opening of the jacket. So when I add those up, I get a measurement of 34. The waist size for a small is 26 inches. This means that there's 8 inches of ease, which also means that you could be up to an extra large in the waist and be a small in the bust and still fit in this jacket pattern. But that means you would have no ease in the waist. But maybe that's how you want it to fit. It's totally up to you. But this is how you would double check those measurements to get the fit. But I highly recommend having at least 4 inches of ease in the waist for this pattern, so that way it's comfortable to wear. Now that we've talked about how to modify the pattern based on your measurements, let's talk about how to make it longer. Let's say you're a 2X and you want to make this jacket longer. We're going to place our 2-inch clear ruler along the hem of the jacket pattern. We're going to draw a line right across the bottom of the ruler. And now we have it extended 2 inches. So now what we need to do is draw our side seam, and you do not want to follow the line that is there on the pattern if you're extending it, because this pattern is designed to go to your waist, so it tapers down a bit at your waist. So what we want to do is bring the line straight down from our underarm. So grab your L square and let's square it out. So you can see that this line is tapering down to the waist. So what you want to do is grab your L square, line up the bottom of the L square with that 2-inch line that you drew, and then line up the other side of your L square with the underarm seam. And once you have that squared up with the underarm seam, you're going to draw down your ruler, and there we go. Now we've got our new side seam. So this is going to be your new cut line. You're also going to do this to the front of the pattern, so that way your patterns match up. And for center back and center front, you're just going to extend this straight line. So now we've extended the entire jacket 2 inches. Now let's go over how to modify the sleeve. Let's talk about how to make it longer and how to make it shorter. The first thing you need to do is measure your arm. Measure from the tip of your shoulder down as long as you would like it. Once you measure your arm, you're going to need to measure your sleeve pattern, and then you can compare the two measurements. And since we're talking about how to make it longer first, let's say I want to make mine a 1/2 inch longer. So I'm at the bottom of the sleeve and I want to make it a 1/2 inch longer. So I'm going to line up a 1/2 inch with the bottom of the sleeve, and then I can draw right across the bottom of the sleeve, making it a 1/2 inch longer, but we need to extend our line. So if I'm doing the small, we are just going to pick this red dotted line here, and we are going to extend it. So now we've extended it a 1/2 inch on this side, and now we need to go to the other side, extend it. Now we've extended that side, and now we have one more spot. You want to pick the appropriate zipper line and extend it to the bottom of the hem, and then we're going to come up to the top of it, and we're going to make it a 1/2 inch shorter because we want to use a 5-inch zipper. So now this is the new spot for the top and the bottom. And that's it. Making it a little longer is a breeze. And if you want to make it shorter, we're going to do the exact same thing, but in the opposite direction. Let's go over it real quick. So let's say we want to make it a 1/2 inch shorter. We're going to draw on the inside of the pattern a 1/2 inch and draw our line. And now what we need to do is raise the zipper line a 1/2 inch because we cut off a 1/2 inch down there, and we need it to remain 5 inches. So we're going to extend it a 1/2 inch, put a little spot there. And because it's already taken off the bottom, we don't have to extend any lines at the bottom or connect anything. All we had to do was draw up a 1/2 inch and extend our zipper line up. Now let's go over how to flare out the coat. Maybe you want a little bit of a 60s vibe, a little bit more movement in your coat. You don't want it just straight down or tapered in. Well, I'm going to show you how to flare it out. So if you're going to be flaring your pattern, first you need to decide, do you want it longer? You're going to add the length first, and then you're going to flare. Let's say we want to flare it 4 inches from the side. So I'm going to measure over 4 inches. I'm going to do 2 and 2 more. So now I know my flare is going to be 4 inches, and that's just for half. So that's 4 inches times 4. So it's going to get 16 inches wider. But we don't want to draw a straight line from our underarm to this extension because this side seam is going to do a weird pointy thing. So what we need to do is bring up our hem on the sides just a little bit. And how do we do that? How do we make that work? Well, what we want to do is measure our side seam. And my side seam length here is 13 1/8. So I'm going to make sure that from the underarm, when I measure down, we're at 13 1/8. And I'm going to draw down. Put a little mark here. And now I know I need to curve and connect this new side seam line with the point when I had squared it out. Now what you want to do is get a curved ruler and line up that old point on the side seam with your new side seam. And now you're going to have a nice curved line. And now you need to do the exact same thing to your front pattern. If you are making adjustments to your pattern, you should be all finished now. So grab your paper scissors and cut out your pattern. And after you've cut out your paper pattern, place it on your fabric and cut out all of your fabric pieces, making sure you're following the grain lines and the cut instructions. So whether it's cut on fold or cut 2 or cut 4 or cut interfacing, whatever it might be. So I have all of my fabric cut out and I even serged up all of my edges. Let's go over all the pieces that you should have cut out right now. You should have a back jacket piece cut out, which was cut 1 on fold. You should have 2 front jacket pieces, which were cut 2. You're also going to notice that you need a zipper for the front of your jacket. Make sure you reference the zipper guide on the pattern for the length. You're also going to need to cut 1 for the collar. You're also going to need to cut 2 sleeves, and you're also going to notice that there's a zipper reference guide for sleeve zippers, and those should be about 5 inches long. You're also going to notice a little zipper facing piece. It's going to be cut 2 lining and cut 4 of interfacing. I prefer to use a fusible interfacing for this. Make sure you choose something in comparable weight to the fabric that you're using for your project. Speaking of fabric, how cool is this fabric that I'm using for my jacket? Quilted jackets are all the rage right now, so I found a pre-quilted fabric, and it also has a lining on the inside of it for me. How cool is that? But you can choose any fabric you want for this jacket. It would look great out of denim. It would look great out of cotton. It would look great out of many suiting fabrics. You choose the fabric that suits your style. You can even upcycle a quilt or a blanket using this pattern. And speaking of fabric, the only other fabric you might need is fabric for a pocket if you plan to put on a pocket. But if you are doing a cropped version, I don't suggest doing a pocket, a patch pocket, because then it's going to be up on your chest and it's going to look a little funky. And there's not really enough fabric here to do a side seam pocket because it's going to be way up here. But if you are lengthening this jacket, it is beautiful with pockets on it. Patch pockets with flaps, side seam pockets. You can do a lot of different options with pockets on this jacket if you're lengthening it. So you should be all prepped now to start sewing the exciting stuff, right? The first thing we're going to sew are the zippers on the sleeves. You want to put in these zippers when the sleeves are flat. So grab your 2 sleeves, grab your 4 little pieces of interfacing, and then your 2 little lining pieces. And make sure your lining pieces have finished edges along with your sleeves. You want to make sure your sleeve is wrong side face up. So for me, the wrong side / the inside is the one with the lining, and the right side is the one with the wool. So I have my sleeve wrong side face up. I'm going to take my sleeve pattern and place it on top. Now you have this little line here, and this is where we're going to put the zipper. So I want you to cut that line up to the top, and we are going to chalk it. So go ahead and chalk right where this line is. And then you can remove your pattern. So now we know exactly where our zipper is going to go, which also tells me exactly where my interfacing needs to go. So you're going to take one of your fusible pieces and you're going to place it right on top of that line and make sure it's covering it so that the line is in the center of the interfacing. And we're going to interface this because it's going to make it nice and sturdy because we're going to put that zipper in there. And while we're at the iron, we also need to put a piece of fusible on this little facing piece. This is also going to be by the zipper. So just make sure you put your fusible side down and go ahead and fuse that little facing piece. So I have the bumpy side of my interfacing face down, and I'm going to put my pressing cloth right on top, and then we're going to press it in place, and I love to use some steam. There we go. Now it's nice and secure on the inside. Now we're going to place the bumpy side of the inner facing on our little facing piece here. Pull over our muslin to protect our iron. And fuse it on. And now we have the interfacing on our little facing piece. Let's pause for a second. I want to show you exactly what we're doing here in the sleeve process with the zipper. So what we're doing right now is we're creating a facing so that way we end up with a nice finished edge by the zipper when we put it in here. And we're going to be creating this opening so that way we can place the zipper in the opening and sew around it. The facing is going to strengthen the area around the zipper, and it's also going to give it a nice clean finish. For this tutorial, I'm going to be demoing it on one sleeve, but you're going to do the exact same thing to both sleeves. Now we're going to take our sleeve and we're going to flip it right side face up. Now what we want to do is find the side that has a little interfacing strip, so it's right here. And now what we want to do is take this little facing piece and we're going to place it right side face down, so the interfacing is face up, and we want to place it in the same position as the interfacing on the back. So just line that up, and now we're going to pin that down. Now once you have this pinned down, we're going to draw a line right up the center of it. This little piece should be 2 inches, so you're going to measure over 1 inch, and you're going to draw a line right up the middle of it. Here we go. Now what we're going to do is go over to the sewing machine and we're going to sew a 1/4 inch away from the line on both sides. So we're going to create a little box. We're going to come up. We're going to stay a 1/4 inch away from this top edge. And then we're going to sew a 1/4 inch away from the blue line going down the other side. If you'd like, you can also chalk this out ahead of time. You could put that 1/4 inch at the top so you know where to stop. And you could also chalk out the 1/4 inch on both sides so that way you have a line to follow while you are sewing. Or you could use the guide on your foot. It's totally up to you and what you're comfortable with. I have my straight stitch selected. I'm going to start at the bottom of the sleeve. I'm going to back stitch and just work my way around this rectangle. I drew the chalk lines, so I'm going to follow the chalk lines while I'm sewing. When you get to the bottom, backstitch and cut. Now we're going to cut up the center of this rectangle we just sewed, but we're going to stop a 1/4 inch away from that top sewing line. So we're going to stop right there. And now we're going to take our scissors and we're going to cut to the very, very corner of that rectangle. Make sure you do not cut through your stitches, but you want to get just right to them. It's really important that you get super close to them, maybe like a 1/16 of an inch away, because it's going to release all of the tension. And now what we need to do is take this piece and flip it to the inside and iron it. So you're going to flip the entire piece to the inside, even the little top piece here. Let's flip it over. So you're going to flip this all to the inside, and then you're going to have this nice little finished, almost looks like a little binding piece. It's a facing. So you're going to have this nice finished little facing piece on the inside like that. So we're going to fold that facing piece towards the inside, and we're going to press it down. Make sure you flip over the other side and press it down as well. And then up here at the top, make sure you flip that up. It should lay nice and flat. If it's not, go back and make sure you've clipped all the way to the corner. So it is nice and pressed, and you're going to notice I have white interfacing here. I would use an interfacing that matches your project, or you could cut it back a little bit, but I really want you guys to see what's going on here. So now I'm going to flip it over to the front, and you can see that we have a nice finished rectangle here. Now what you want to do is place the zipper in the opening and make sure the pole is at the bottom of the sleeve, because we want to be able to open this up and have the sleeve open where that zipper is. So make sure your pole is at the bottom and place it under here, and make sure you center it to this opening. You can pin it if you like. You could also baste it down first because it does like to move with all of these thick layers. Now we're going to head over to the sewing machine and we are going to sew right around this rectangle, 1/4 of an inch away. You could even do 1/8 of an inch. It's really up to you and the look you want. We're essentially top stitching on the zipper. I have my all-purpose zipper foot on and we're going to sew right around the zipper. When we get to the bottom, come 1/4 inch below it, leave your needle in, lift your foot up, and turn. Come 1/4 inch down, leave your needle in, foot up, and turn, and work your way back up the zipper. Back stitch and cut. Since I have a really thick fabric, I'm going to go back around the rectangle and add a little edge stitch. So real close to the edge of the fabric, about 1/8 of an inch away. So I put my all-purpose foot on to do this stitch. Back stitch and cut. Now our zipper is nice and durable. Now that we have our zipper complete, let's take a close-up look at it. Our zipper is looking so nice set in here. So we have nice clean edges all the way around this rectangle. We have that edge stitch and top stitch securing the zipper in. When we open it, voila, it looks great. On the back, you're going to notice my zipper is way longer because I could not find a 5-inch zipper today. Totally thought I had one. So if you also don't have a short enough zipper, you can use a longer zipper. And then because we sewed over, it's secure. You can go ahead and cut that off. And then I would suggest bias binding the edge of this so it's not sharp, because when you cut into the zipper teeth, it does leave a sharp little edge here. So just go ahead, wrap a little piece of bias tape or a piece of ribbon around the edge and sew it down so it's not sharp on your arm. Now that we have both of the sleeve zippers finished, let's take a look at them. They are looking great. If this is your first time attempting this technique, I highly suggest practicing on a scrap fabric with an extra zipper first. That way, when you practice on your actual jacket, it's going to go smooth. Because centering that zipper perfect can be a little bit tricky. Now grab your back bodice and your front bodice pieces and we are going to sew the shoulders together. We're going to place the front bodice pieces on top of the back bodice and we are going to line up the shoulders. So we're going to line up these shoulders, pin them together, and then sew them up at a 1/2 inch. All ready to sew. Don't forget your seam allowance is a 1/2 inch at the shoulders. Now we're going to sew up the other side. Now that these are sewn together, we're going to iron them open. It's really important to iron them open so that way when we put in our sleeve and our collar, everything's nice and flat. Now it's time to put that sleeve into the armhole. So right here we have the armhole, back and front, and then here we have the sleeve, front and back. Remember, that zipper on the sleeve is the back of the sleeve. You can also reference the notches on your pattern as well. So what we need to do is run 2 rows of basting stitches along the sleeve cap here, and we are going to do that from notch to notch. My notches wore off, so I'm just going to mark them back on. So if yours wore off, just go ahead and mark them again. So we've got the front here with 1 notch mark, and then we have the back here with 2 notch marks. There we go. So we're going to do a basting stitch from the front notch all the way to the back notch. Our first row is going to be a 1/4 inch away from the edge, and our second row is going to be a 1/2 inch. So I have my stitch length set to 5 for my basting stitch, and I'm going to work my way all the way around the top of the sleeve here from notch to notch. We are not going to back stitch. We are going to lift our needle and our foot up, pull out a decent amount of thread, and then cut. We want to leave those thread tails there so that way we can cinch it up later. So now we're going to add our second row of basting stitches. There we go. Now we're done putting our basting stitches in. Now that we have the basting stitches in, we are going to pull the 2 top threads, cinch it up, and fit it into the armhole. Let me show you how this technique works. I'm going to hold the 2 top threads, and I'm going to pull my fabric, not the thread. If you pull the thread, you can possibly just pull it right out. So we just want to cinch up the fabric along the thread, so that way we can create this nice curve here for the top of the shoulder. See how nicely that starts curving? So we're not putting gathers in it, we're just creating shape in the sleeve. I usually like to work my way from one end up to the top, and then I work my way from the other end up to the top, just cinching up the fabric enough to create shape, but not so much that I'm getting big gathers in it. And you'll notice that the edge starts to look a little wobbly or ruffly, and that's totally fine. As long as where your sewing line is, it's not gathered. And once you have it cinched up a bit, we're going to start pinning it into place. And you can always move it around more and adjust it as you're pinning. So we do have notches on our pattern. So we've got the 1 notch on the front bodice armhole and the 1 notch on the sleeve here for the front. So when we're pinning this together, we want to make sure that our notches line up. And then for the back, we have 2 notches on the back armhole and 2 little notches on the sleeve in the back. So we want to make sure we match those up as well. So we're going to flip our fabric right side together. I'm going to start here at the back, pin my edges together, and then start working my way around this armhole. I also like to go to the other end and pin this. So I have the front here, so we're going to pin all the way up to the front notch. And now we just have the sleeve and the rest of the armhole here that we're working with that we're going to ease in. This is a technique that takes a little practice, might be a little tricky if this is your first time, but trust the process and just keep working your sleeve around the armhole. And if you end up at a spot in your sleeve where there's too many gathers happening, just go ahead and smooth it and move it around because the fabric moves along those basting stitches. And we are going to take those basting stitches out later, so if yours ended up a little further than your seam allowance, don't worry about that. We'll get rid of that later. So I'm going to undo that pin and just smooth it down a little bit more. There we go. Now we have our sleeve pinned into our armhole. And we're going to sew this up with a regular stitch at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I'm sewing with the sleeve face up, so that way if I need to move around any of those basting stitches, I can. So just regular straight stitch, 1/2 inch seam allowance, back stitch at the beginning. Stop and take out your pins before you get to them. Keep double checking, make sure you don't have anything caught on the other side. Come all the way to the end, back stitch, and cut. Now that we have the sleeve sewn in, let's take a look at it and remove the basting stitches. Look at how nice this sleeve looks, and we have that nice curve here for our shoulder. So we have our 2 rows of basting stitches here. Now the row that's on the inside of the stitch, you can totally leave that one. You can remove it if you want though, but you're not going to see it on the outside. But if it's on the outside of your seam, you need to remove it because you're going to see it on the outside of your garment. And well, we don't want that. So let's remove that basting stitch. And then it'll make our garment look so much nicer. Now that we have those basting stitches removed, it's time to sew up the underarm of the sleeve and the side seam of the jacket all at the same time. I just love this method. So to start pinning this, we're going to place right sides together and we're going to start at the armpit. And I like to make sure that my seams are open. So if you'd like, press these open first or go ahead and just open these up with your fingers. And make sure you put a pin in and it's coming right out of the seam on the other side. So that way we know it's perfectly aligned up. And then work your way down the side seam of your jacket. And then work your way down the underarm seam on your sleeve. And then we're going to sew it up from the bottom of the jacket all the way down to the hem of the sleeve. Don't forget your seam allowance is a 1/2 inch and make sure you have your regular straight stitch on and don't forget to back stitch at the beginning. When you get to the bottom, don't forget to back stitch and cut. Now we're going to iron our seam open so that way we get a nice, crisp, professional looking garment. So I have my sleeve here on a sleeve board, but if you don't have a sleeve board, you can totally roll up a towel, put it in the sleeve, so that way you don't get creases on the side of your sleeve when you're ironing open your seam. Our seam is nice and pressed open, and now I'm going to pull it down and iron open the side seam as well. And now we'll have a nice crisp seam. Look at how nice the sleeve looks. Now you're going to do the exact same thing to the other side. Check out our jacket. It is looking so good. I cannot wait to finish this up and try it on. So next we're going to be attaching the collar. It's that rectangle piece. So we are going to iron it in half first, and then I'm going to show you how to attach it. After you have your collar ironed in half, I want you to actually open it up. And now what we're going to do is line the right side of one of the collar pieces to the edge of the neck. And we are going to line it right up with center front because the zipper is going to go into the collar. So we want to make sure that that is nice and lined up. And we are going to pin this collar all the way around the neck. Now, depending on the fabric you are using, your neck could stretch out, so you might need to throw in a stay stitch there. It's just like a stitch by the edge to help secure the neck of your jacket. Also, if you're using a thinner fabric, you could also interface your collar, completely up to you. I have quite a few layers here in this collar with batting, lining, and wool, so I'm not going to interface it. I really don't want to make it any thicker or stiffer than it already is. So you are pinning a rectangle into a curved shape, and sometimes this can be a little bit tricky and you need to ease it into place. So if you're finding that it doesn't go perfectly smoothly in, that's because it's not going to. We have two different shapes here that we're attaching together. But I promise you, they will go together. There we go. So now we have that rectangle pinned to the neckline of the jacket. Now we're going to sew those two pieces together at a 1/2 inch. I'm going to be sewing this together with the jacket side face up and the collar face down. So that way I make sure I don't get any puckers in the curved part of the pattern. Back stitch and cut at the end. Now we have half of our collar sewn onto the neckline. Now it's time for the zipper. So the whole reason we folded the collar in half is because we need the zipper to go all the way up to that fold line. So we need to know where to start sewing that zipper, because the other half of the collar is going to be on the inside to finish it off. Now it's time to put in that zipper, and we're going to be putting in a separating zipper. So make sure your zipper separates at the bottom so that way you can unzip your jacket fully to get it on and off. I know sometimes it can be a little bit confusing shopping for zippers because they kind of all look the same, so just make sure it's a separating zipper. And if you chose to make your jacket longer, make sure you buy a longer zipper. And now a jacket zipper doesn't have to go all the way to the very bottom of the jacket, but you want it to at least come down to your waist. Now we're going to take the zipper and we're going to unzip it to separate it. Now I'm going to be doing the left side of the zipper first. And the easiest way to look at this is let's place the zipper right side face up. But when we sew, we need to sew everything right sides together. So we're going to flip it so that way the zipper tape is at the edge of the fabric and the teeth are towards the inside. Now when we position this, we want this metal piece here to be all the way up at the top of this fold. So I want you to unfold your collar, and we're going to make sure that that metal piece is right there, just right below the fold, so that way when the jacket folds in half, your zipper is going to zip all the way up to the top of your neck. Let's put a few pins in this just to keep it in place while we're getting over to the sewing machine. Now here at the neck where you have this seam, you can iron this open. If you have a thin fabric, you can iron it down. I have a pretty thick fabric, so I'm actually going to just fold this open. I'm going to open up the seam when the zipper goes over it. So I have my zipper pinned to the jacket. And I want to mention that your zipper should not go all the way to the very bottom of your jacket. We need to leave room here to hem it later. So if anything, make sure your zipper is shorter than your actual jacket here. I have my all-purpose zipper foot on and I put it onto the left side. I have moved my needle position over just a little bit because I want my stitch to be in the center of the zipper tape. So your movements might be a little bit different on your machine, but just try and make sure that your needle is going to be sewing in the center of the zipper tape. And we're going to work our way all the way up to the top of the zipper. When you get up to where the little metal nub is on the zipper, I want you to take the rest of the zipper tape and pull it over to the outside and sew over it when it's at a 90-degree angle. Back stitched and cut. Now that you have the zipper on, it should look something like that. Now we want to attach the other side of the zipper and zip it up. Now what we want to do is mark on the side of the zipper that we still need to sew where the seam is, so that way we can line the seam up with the other collar so that way it ends up even. I usually like to just take the chalk, put a little piece of chalk there, so that way I know right where I need to line up this part of the zipper with the collar, so that way when I'm sewing and I zip up, it ends up nice and even so it doesn't end up skewed. Now we're going to unzip that side and flip it right side down, making sure that we're lining up that chalk mark with the seam there. So just make sure you have that chalk mark right with the collar seam. Double check it a few times, make sure you got it nice and lined up. And then go ahead and put a pin in there. There we go. And then go ahead, pin the rest of your zipper down. And then we're going to do the same thing we just did, sewing in the center of the zipper tape and at the top, making sure that the top of the zipper tape is folded over to a 90-degree angle. Now that we have both sides of the zipper in, what we need to do is make sure we turn the zipper tape to the inside, and we're going to add a top stitch, stitching that down so that way the zipper is nice and flat, because right now it wants to pop out and curl out, so we want to flatten it out with a top stitch. We're going to top stitch right next to the zipper. So make sure you have your needle positioned center, and I would put on your regular foot again as well. Back stitch at the end and cut. Now I'm going to start at the bottom so I can keep the bulk of my jacket to the outside of my machine. And I'm just going to work my way all the way up the side of that zipper. You get to the top, back stitch, and cut. Look at how nice that zipper looks with that top stitch going along the edge of it. Now it's time to finish off the top of that collar. If you have a thick fabric, I'm going to show you how to finish this, and then we'll talk about how to finish it if you have a thinner fabric. So this edge here by the zipper, just continue folding that in nice and flat. Mine's about 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to go ahead and just put a pin here for now. Okay. Now my seam here, I ironed it and pressed it open when I did the zipper, so that way it's not as bulky here. So what we can do is take this finished edge here and fold it down to match the seam allowance here. And then what we're going to do is sew these two pieces of seam allowance together. And then over here at the zipper, to finish this, we are going to fold this right at that crease there. Make sure it's in the center of the zipper tape. You can either slip stitch that by hand, or if you want to use a sewing machine, flip it over and stitch right back into that top stitch, and it's going to catch this edge here, finishing it off. If you have a thinner fabric, you can take the edge that serge, fold it under about 1/4 of an inch, and then top stitch it down. You will see a top stitch on the outside, but it's a nice clean finished look. It catches it on the outside and on the inside. So right now I'm stitching down the collar to the neck right within the seam allowance. We're going to back stitch. We're using a permanent straight stitch. You're just going to sew as far as you can till the beginning of the collar kind of gets in the way. Back stitch and cut. Now we need to sew up the end of the collar here that I left open. So I'm turning that in all the way up to the top, nice and smooth, and I'm folding it over the zipper tape. And we want to make sure that it is in the center of the zipper tape here. And now we're going to flip it over and sew right in that top stitch that already exists. So we're going to sew right in that existing top stitch so that way it looks invisible from the outside. Back stitch and cut. Now I'm just going to stitch down the other side. Back stitch and cut. Now that you have the collar finished, it should look like this on the outside. And then it should look like this on the inside, nice and finished and sewn down. Now all we need to do is hem the bottom of the jacket and the bottom of the sleeves. I left a 1/2 inch seam allowance on here for me to hem it. You could have left more, or maybe you left less. So go ahead and hem the bottoms. So I'm doing a single folded hem. You could totally bias bind it, do a really nice hem. You could use some hem tape. Maybe you have a thinner fabric, you want to do a rolled hem. You have different options for your hem, so hem it appropriately for your project. And since my fabric's real thick with the quilting, I'm going to be using that single folded hem. A rolled hem would probably be way too thick. And now we're all done hemming. We did it! We finished our zip-up jacket. Let's take a close look at all the details. I love this quilted fabric in this style. It's kind of a boxy silhouette, but it has great features on it. We've got our nice hem at the bottom. We've got our top stitching going up the zipper. We've got our nice structured collar up here. Our zipper goes all the way to the top of our collar. That was a nice, important detail to follow. We have a nice set-in sleeve. We've got that beautiful curve up here for our shoulder. And then on the back of our sleeve, we have these really cool zippers here. Love that detail there. And then on the back of the jacket, it's just a nice clean look. And then we have our collar up here. I just tried it on and it is fitting great. This is part of the joy of creating your own clothing, making things that fit great. I love that it's tailored and fitted, but it still has a bit of a boxy shape to it. So it's not too tight, but it's nice and fitted up in the shoulders and the arms. And I just love these zippers on the arms. Kind of reminds me of a motorcycle jacket. And the jacket looks great with last month's midi skirt pattern. This is a great way to style this jacket for an extra layer when it's just a little bit cold outside or maybe a little bit cold inside. Depending on the fabric you make it out of, it could be a jacket you wear all year long. This jacket's great because it's very versatile. You can style it with a tank top or a t-shirt under it, or get a little fancy and put a blouse on under it. With the fabric choice that I chose, this jacket has a very casual style to it, so I can really see myself wearing it with jeans all the time. Let's go see what it looks like with jeans on. And it looks great with jeans too. I could definitely see this becoming the new coat that I wear in the studio when I get just a little bit chilly. The thing I really love about this pattern for you is that it's super versatile. You can make it out of so many different fabrics. You can really play with the length, shorter, longer, fuller, flare it out, make it slimmer. The possibilities are endless. Thanks so much for watching Sewing Anastasia today. I hope you enjoyed making this awesome coat with me today. If you have any questions, leave it down below in the comments and I'll get back with you as soon as I can. And make sure you like and subscribe to Sewing Anastasia if you're not already a subscriber. And make sure you hit that notification bell so you know when the new videos come out. And if you're already a subscriber, well, thank you so much for watching today. These videos are for you guys. Let's keep on sewing. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram, Facebook, all the socials. That way we can stay connected and creative together. And I do post every single day, all day long in those Instagram stories about what's going on in the studio and what's new in my sewing world. So make sure you check that out. And don't forget, I teach sewing classes here in Chicago in my design studio. So if you're here, come on in and take some classes with me. And if you're not, well, that's okay. Make sure you check out my new online sewing school. There's a link down below for both of those. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.